Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
Is America in decline? Our beloved nation, the land of the free, the home of the brave, is our nation down a slippery slope of decline? Well, good evening, folks. My name is Alex McFarland. So honored to be sitting in tonight for attorney, pastor, pundit, thinker Abe Hamilton, and I've got the privilege of being a guest host tonight on the Hamilton Corner here on the American Family Radio Network. We've got a really, really great show. We're going to talk in just a moment with a guest, author and commentator Wayne White, about the question, is our nation in decline? And you know, as I was prepping for the show today, working on this, here we are 25 days into the month of January, the first month of 2023, and it is said that there have been 39 public shootings in America thus far. Now, last Saturday, just under a week ago, was the March for Life in Washington, and I'm very excited to know that, after the overturning of Roe versus Wade, maybe there were some that had a little bit of a fear that commitment for the cause of life had diminished, and would there be the robust turnout for the March for Life? And there really was. I don't know exact numbers, but they estimate it was well over 100,000 people. And, as I'm hearing about all the shootings, 39 shootings, 4 officers in Atlanta Saturday, then 10 people shot in Los Angeles Sunday, and then yesterday, 7 people in Northern California. And it just seems like on and on. Life is so cheap. Here's the correlation, folks. As we have removed legal protection for the unborn, and as many people have just argued for the alleged right to abort, as life has become cheap and humans are not shown the respect that they're due as people being made in the image of God. It reminds me of Jefferson in his notes on the state of Virginia, 1785. Thomas Jefferson asked this question, a rhetorical question, which means the answer is obvious. But Jefferson said, "Can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that the liberties are the gift of God?" And indeed they are. They are not to be violated, but with his wrath. If we're in decline, it's not because God has changed, but it's because we have changed and turned from God. Well, to speak with us about this, and I'm sure other topics as well, we've got Wayne White on. He's an author, the book, The Decline of America. He's spent a lifetime observing not only the culture and the trends, but the treachery of communism. And first of all, Mr. White, I want to thank you for making time to be on the Hamilton Corner on the American Family Radio Network, but I also want to thank you for your analysis and your articulate defense of God and country. So let's talk about some of these things, but welcome to the American Family Radio Network.
Well, thank you for having me on, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, growing up in school, in elementary school, and I went to public school, we talked about the USSR, and it would be many years before I would become a born-again Christian, and it was even before I really understood how blessed we are and what it was like to be patriotic. But I want to tell you, from my 5th and 6th and 7th grade classes when we were learning what communism was, I had a terror of communism and socialism. And nowadays, so many kids, they're open to socialism. They're open to statism. Give us your take and what led you to study it so much in depth and try to help people understand the mortal danger that communism represents.
Well, first of all, it tells you how boring I was. At 13, I read the Communist Manifesto, and it didn't make sense to me then. But what you have to understand about communism and socialism are really the same, and don't let anybody kid you. But here's what it's all about. The reason communism has to do away with religion is because as far as communism is concerned, the state is in charge of everything, life, death, your job, your life. And so it cannot tolerate another entity that is above it. And that's why they must destroy all religions. And one of my pet peeves is I've never understood how Democrats can go to church or any religion on a weekend when, as far as I have been able to research, the only people trying to destroy religion in this country and do away with any religious symbols happen to be Democrats. But yet they manage to go to church and think it's okay. So there's a lot of, in my opinion, things people don't know what they don't know, and that's what's wrong with the kids today. The educational system is taken over by the communists a long time ago. They've been at this almost 100 years, and it's very slowly and very deliberately they've gotten to where they are today. But the kids just don't know about communism. They think it's great. If you ask them, they say, well, it's not communism, it's socialism. Well, no, they're the one and same, you know.
Well, yeah. And you know, Wayne, I think that young people have at least been open to socialism, for one thing, because they don't really understand it and they've not heard what you so articulately lay out, the treachery and just the evil of it. But the other thing is, you know, young people are more emotive than cognitive. They feel more than they think very often. And it's like back in the 60s, they used to say if you're not a liberal under age 30, you don't have a heart. But if you are a liberal after age 30, you don't have a mind. That you remember that quote? I mean, it's been sold to the kids because young people are impressionable, and young people really are not mature enough to understand what a blessed thing we have, a representative republic, that we're going to have to work and pray and influence, and we've got to save our nation and preserve our nation. So the Democrats and the socialists have been very shrewd in taking the time to win over several generations of young people, haven't they?
Absolutely, and I think it was Reagan said many, many years ago, it only takes one generation to lose a country, and they've been at it. But one of the problems, and this is one of the things that I preach about in the book, is that at this point, we refuse to call the devil the devil. In other words, it's communism that is eating away at the country, and it is the problem is they're in little 1,000 organizations, and we look at them as little organizations and think of them that way. But it's all one big octopus with a lot of tentacles. They all work the same. They all want the same thing. They even share money amongst themselves. And we refuse to call them communists. We call them Democrats. We call them socialists. We call them liberals. We call them leftists. We call them progressives. And the interesting thing about calling them progressives is in the 30s and 40s, America was very anti-communist. And even Hollywood was, believe it or not. That's why they took over SAG. But at any rate, they decided,
the Screen Actors Guild, you mean?
Yes. And
wow.
they infiltrated it because it was so influential. But they changed their name. They said, we've got to call ourselves something else because people are anti-communist. So they said, okay, we'll call ourselves progressives. All of the different names they use, and you know how good they are at taking names and making them something they aren't, like illegals, undocumented, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about education, if you would, because refresh my memory, Wayne, was it Antonio Gramsci who talked about communists making, quote, the long march through the institutions? Do I have that quote right?
I believe so. But another thing, a lot of people don't realize that the National Educational Association, which is the largest educational association in the world, it's worldwide, was founded in 1857 by a Marxist. And they have taken control of the education since the 1900s.
Yes.
And their policy has been to educate young people in the ideology of socialism and communism, and they've done a very good job, and they've done it very slowly, and that's the problem. The kids they're not getting American history, they're getting communist history.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and by the way, where can people find your book, The Decline of America? Where can they get that, Wayne?
It's available on Amazon, it's in paperback, it's in audio, and it's also on ebook, and I would recommend, because it is well documented about the history of communism in the country and where it has taken us. And again, if we don't start calling it what it is, we're going to lose, because they cannot stand to be called communist. They know people can relate. They don't relate to Marxism. You know, there's not a Marxist country in the world. Cuba's not Marxist; they're communist. They
Right.
call themselves. There's a difference. Russia is communist. There's communist China, and people can relate to those things because they know what they are. But Marx, the philosophy, it doesn't communism, and they cannot stand to be called communist. And
Hey, Wayne, you're breaking up a little bit. You're breaking up a little bit. I don't know what we can do about that. I hope we can. I want to ask you this,
Sorry.
Wayne. Do you think the public schools are redeemable? And look, I know that some people homeschool, and they're Christian schools and private schools and classical schools. I hear so many horror stories about critical race theory, wokeness, the public schools. For those of us that love God and country, are the K through 12 public schools savable?
only one way, and that is the money should follow the child. And then you get into the free enterprise system where you're going to send your kid to the best school, and otherwise, no. As long as the teachers' unions control the money and the education, we lose, period. So the money's got to follow the kid. And I don't mean vouchers. I mean the entire dollar amount.
Do you advocate for concerned citizens, attending school board meetings or running for city council and running for school board and such as that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the other thing. They know that the vote, is one way to control things. And we've got to get back to educating our children on the greatness of America. Was it perfect?
Amen.
No, but compared to any other country, I'll stack it up against anybody.
Amen. Amen. Let me ask you this, Wayne. And by the way, folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking with author Wayne White on his book, The Decline of America. So, we're a constitutionalist republic, a representative republic based on a Judeo-Christian foundation, biblical. The principles, the presuppositions that informed our Declaration, Constitution, and way of life were harmonious with Scripture, and on paper still are. So why would people that disagree want to take over this country? I mean, it's a lot of work, a lot of effort, something that people wouldn't see in their lifetime. When we come back, I want to unpack the question, what drives the communist? Why would they care? And it's yes or no before this break. Wayne, communism has not really worked anywhere, has it? Except to tear things down. But it's never positive and productive, is it?
No. Not a place on the earth.
Not a place on the earth. So why are we going to throw our lot in with something that has a 100% track record of failure? That's the question. Stay tuned, folks. Alex McFarland here, author Wayne White. A lot to do in this show. It's going to be great. So stay with us. The Hamilton Corner is back after this.
shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the program. Alex McFarland here. So honored to be with you on the American Family Radio Network. We're talking with author Wayne White, the author of the book Decline of America. Hey, we're going to resume our very robust conversation in a moment, but I want to invite you all. Listen, folks, April 21 through 23, we're going to be outside of Nashville in Paris, Tennessee, our Truth for New Generation Apologetics Conference. You can go to the website truthforanewgeneration.com. This is the 49th conference of this type that we've organized in the last 20 years, and it's going to be great. The theme is Truth Matters, confronting the issues that will shape our culture, shape our future. Abe Hamilton will be there in person, Will and Miki Addison from Airing the Addisons, Bert Harper, a lot going on. Folks, we've got a nation. We've got to be equipped. We've got to speak out. So I would love for you to join us at our Truth for a New Generation conference. And by the way, we've worked with every speaker you've ever heard of and a few you probably haven't. If you would like for us to bring one of our worldview conferences to your city, email us. And you can go on alexmcfarland.com. We would love to hear from you. Wayne, before we came back after the break, you and I were talking off air just a little bit, and I'm going to throw you a curveball here. We were talking about Governor DeSantis in Florida, and listen, everywhere I go, he is so popular, and deservedly so. I mean, he's a great leader. And of course, President Trump has declared that he is running again for 2024. So here are two formidable leaders. In your opinion, as a commentator, Wayne, I mean, what's the chance that Trump and DeSantis could wind up on the ticket together? Is that even a possibility?
Oh, in my opinion, and it's worth everything I charge for it, which is zero. My opinion, Alex, is very simple. Right now, the Republican Party is shooting itself in the foot. It's already started advertising for DeSantis to run, and you know that Trump is going to run. Now, you know that if the two of them are in a primary, they certainly are not going to be saying good things about each other, even if they were in love with each other. That's just not the way primaries work. My prediction is simple. If the two of them run against each other in the primaries, your next president is going to be Michelle Obama. You can put that on your refrigerator.
Wow.
And here's the best way to look at it. They're the two most popular candidates in the country. And the best thing they could do is get together before the primaries and say, we're going to be a ticket, and that ought to shut the primaries down for the Republicans. And you would get 12 years of Republican rule versus if one of them wins. If Trump wins, you get 4 years. And maybe DeSantis would be able to come in and be the next president if he wasn't the vice president. But if they run together, you get 12 years. You get 4 of Trump, and you get 8 of DeSantis. But if they fight in the primaries, and you know they're not going to sit there and say, oh, I think that guy's great, he'd make a great president. That's just not the way primaries work. And
right.
The Republicans, they're not kind of backing Trump because he's not a politician, and they don't like him because he's not a politician. And so my prediction is if they run against each other, it's not going to be good. So that's just my opinion.
Let me ask you this. So regardless of who the candidate is, and, I've never gambled on anything in my life because it's the Lord's money, and I've never gambled at all. But I got to tell you, if the ticket were Trump DeSantis, with utter confidence, I would bet they would win. But here's my question. What hope do we have that the votes would be honestly tabulated, Wayne? I mean, do you look for honest vote counting in the elections ahead, or are we just resigned to the fact that the left has made election fraud an art form?
Oh, they definitely made it an art form. And if we don't change, first of all, I personally think that the election day should be a paid holiday, and you get paid if you show your employer that you actually voted. Otherwise, you don't get a paid holiday. And there shouldn't be 30 days or 40 days of voting
Early.
before Election Day, and there needs to be a tighter control on mail-in ballots and things like that. But no, they've got an art form. I think it was used in this last midterm election, and it was definitely, unequivocally used in the national election.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, this is so speculative, but do you believe really vote-wise Trump won in 2020?
No, there's no question about it. You know, let me give you a quote from Stalin. Stalin said, "People who vote don't count. People who count votes count." Or he said, "People who vote aren't important. People who count votes are important."
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
they've got it down to science.
So let me ask you this, and sadly we're almost out of time. I've got to have you back on, but why? You know, so America is a Judeo-Christian representative republic. Other nations are what other nations are. Why would the communists want to invest in something that most of them wouldn't have seen in their own lifetime? The decades-long deconstruction of God and country. Why tear down the most prosperous, stable, safe nation, the freest nation, the nation that has given the world everything from penicillin to indoor air conditioning, airplanes, telephones, automobiles? Why did they want to turn America communist?
So there isn't somebody to look at. Even when I was young and I would ask people, if communism is so good, why aren't people flocking to it? And they said, because the whole world isn't communist. And what that means is, if there's nothing else to look at, we're great. And that's it. They want to rule the world, and they are working on it and being very successful. China could well dominate the majority and become a superpower in the next 10 or 15 years.
Yeah. Well, and you know, everybody has their God. And folks, let me just say this. If you don't have the true and living God, you'll follow a God of your own making. And for those that don't know the heavenly city, it's the city of man. It's the state. And Kennedy said that in 1961, you know, and others have said it as well. Wayne White, tell us again where we can find your book, The Decline of America.
It is available on Amazon, like I say, in paperback. It's also available in audio, on ebook.
Wow. Well, hey, thank you for your research. Thank you for being with us on the show today, and I look forward to when you and I can speak again very soon.
Alex, enjoyed it. Appreciate you having me.
God bless you. Alex McFarland here. If you recognize my voice, it might be from a show called Exploring the Word. Exploring the Word is heard daily live, Monday through Friday on the American Family Radio Network, 4 to 5 Eastern, 3 to 4 Central, and so forth across the country. And I have the privilege of filling in periodically, and that's what I'm doing tonight. My next guest, we're going to have Col Brian Searcy on, and when he's ready, we'll bring him on. But I want to make you aware of a couple of things, if you don't mind. I mentioned the Truth for a New Generation Conference, April 21 through 24 in Paris, Tennessee. The theme is Truth Matters, confronting the issues that will shape our future. Abe Hamilton will be there, the Addisons, Will and Mickey Addison, Bert Harper, myself. One of the things we're going to do with the Truth for a New Generation in Paris, Tennessee, we're going to be in at least one public high school. We're going to have a great speaker named Carl Kirby of Reasons for Hope, probably the best speaker on creation versus evolution for young people and what the implications of that are. The website is truthforanewgeneration.com. And then also I'll make you aware of my campus clubs. We're chartering clubs just all the time where we give talking points to young people about God and country. And the campus clubs are called Viral Truth. You know how kids, they'll send a video, videos go viral. Well, we want truth to go viral. And the website for our biblical worldview campus clubs is viraltruth.com. Well, right now, we're going to talk about the escalation in violent crime and several other things, and for lack of a better word, situational awareness. Our guest is Col Brian Searcy, retired U.S. Air Force Colonel. I want to say first and foremost, Colonel Searcy, thank you for serving our country.
Well, thank you very much, Alex, and thanks for having me on the show tonight. I appreciate it.
Well, it's a great privilege. Appreciate you being willing to do that. Before we talk about some of the issues of the day, give us a little bit of your background, Colonel Searcy.
Yeah, in 1987, I went to officer training school. From there, went to undergraduate navigator training at Mather Air Force Base out in California. Got my wings in 1988. First assignment was AWACS, and from there, right into the first Gulf War. Then 23 years later, retired as a colonel. And then in between, I flew AWACS, I flew J-Stars. I commanded the ops floor on the Air Operations Center for the air war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and commanded a squadron, a group, and a wing and squeezed in 2 tours to the Pentagon.
Wow. It's been my privilege. My wife and I lived in Colorado Springs, and we knew lots of people that were there at the Air Force Academy. And I'm thinking of another colonel right now, a very godly man, but some of the finest people our nation has produced, and you're one of them. And I want to say for your service to God and country, thank you, sir.
Well, thank you.
And let's talk a little bit about there are several things, but our military, is our military susceptible to wokeness? And if so, to what degree has our military gone woke, in your opinion?
Well, I would say the answer to the first question is yes. To the degree, it's hard to say. I would, if and I'm not as connected as I used to be, 10 years ago. But my observation is that the senior officer ranks, where politics does come into play, they're aiming to please those that have the loudest voice, and who the commander in chief is. I would say that, and this is again my opinion and somewhat of an observation, that those that actually are out there doing the job, they do not want it to be woke. They want to be able to make sure that they have the necessary tools. The wing commanders, the colonels, they want to make sure that they and their people have the tools to be able to do the job that they need to do to defend the country. So I think that's part of the challenge, is to have our senior leadership continue to remember why they are in the positions that they are, and that is to ensure those people on the front lines have all the tools that they need, and that we have to defend the Constitution of the United States and what our country is all about, a God-fearing nation where we need to follow that as our guidance.
Yes. How is morale? I mean, do recruits and people coming up through the ranks, do they feel like they've got to kind of walk on eggshells and be politically correct, or is there a lot of morale and a lot of freedom?
As you grow in rank and responsibility, that's when the politics does start to come in, and that's when you have to make a decision. Do you want to do the things that are necessary to get to that next rank, or do you want to just be able to do your job? There's a lot of colonels and one-star generals, like myself, that we wanted to do the job. We didn't want to necessarily do the politics, take some of the assignments potentially to get to that next level. I am concerned. I think that the fact that each of the branches is having difficulty doing recruiting, I think, is an indication
that was my next question
of what's going on in the ranks. So there is some concern there.
Yeah, that was my next question, because I spoke at a men's conference. I'm not going to say where, but it was one of the larger southeastern states, and some men came up that were in the state law enforcement, and they said, "Please pray." Think about this, Colonel Searcy. These were highway patrolmen for a very, very large southern state. They said, please pray that we could get some recruits. Young people don't want to go into law enforcement. And I've wondered about that in terms of recruitment for our military, and what an honorable vocation and career trajectory it is to serve our country in the military, as you have done. But is as far as you know, is recruitment down?
Yeah, recruitment is down, and I contributed to, the woke piece that we're talking about, to use that term. But I also do believe that over the last 10 or 15 years, the indoctrination in our schools and the things that have gone on, the fact that we're no longer having the Pledge of Allegiance, that there's no longer God in schools, that there's no longer parents their kids about how great of a country this is. And, if people were just to travel around the world to second and third world countries, they would see how amazing the United States is and how amazing we actually have it here and how important our freedoms are. And quite frankly, how important it is over the next 5 to 10 years or even 6 to 12 months is going to be for those of us that want the United States to stay a free republic, a God-fearing republic. We're going to have to come together and start as a larger group. We've got parents pushing back a lot of things in schools, but we all need to get together and not just talk about it and not just complain about it. We actually need to take action, and that's part of what we're doing with the programs that we have.
We've got a brief break, and if you would please stay with us. By the way, before we pull away for a brief break, Colonel Searcy, do you have a website?
Yes, it's www.paratus.group. Best thing, go on there, take a look around, go to the contact page, send us a note, and learn more about what we're doing.
Yeah, and spell that URL again, please.
It's www.paratus, Paratus.group, Group.
Paratus.group. Well, Alex McFarland here. We're going to come right back. We're going to talk more about our blessed, beloved nation and what God might do through each of our lives to help restore it. Stay tuned. We're back after this.
The Hamilton Corner podcast and 1-minute commentaries are available at afr.net. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Well, thanks for staying with us, folks. Alex McFarland here, and so honored that you're listening. And, the news, we're reading about the 39 public shootings already in 2023, and we're only 25 days into January. And I want to talk with Col Brian Searcy, retired U.S. Air Force colonel, about violent crime is up across the U.S., a study reveals. Before the break, you gave your website, Paratus Group, and folks, that is spelled Paratus.group. By the way, Colonel, what will they find there at the website, and what is your mission with the Paratus Group?
Around the United States and conduct situational awareness boot camps to bring parents or go into schools, businesses, and churches and tell them what situational awareness is. It's a God-given gift that we all have, but most people today, unfortunately, don't know that they have it. So we have to educate them on that. We have to educate people about all the threats that we face today. And unfortunately, there's too many to ramble off here quickly. We have to educate them on the 10 critical personal skills that we all need to learn. And unfortunately, about 92% of kids coming out of high school today have not developed these skills. And then we have a year-long program, because what's important here is to learn and develop the habits and the behaviors, not to have a one-hour lecture. We all need to learn the habits and behaviors and the mindset of situational awareness, using a process to prevent bad things from happening. And you just talked about the 39 shootings that we've had so far. The U.S. Secret Service just came out with their annual report regarding active shooting, and about 93% of all those bad events can be prevented because the person that actually does the shooting says things, behaves in certain ways that people actually see, but they don't recognize it. And even if they do recognize it, they don't know what to do about it. And that's one of the things that our program focuses on. It empowers people to not only see things, but to know what to do about it, and then to actually take action and do something about it.
And doesn't it seem like, there are some commonalities and there are profiles. And Colonel, as I'm interacting with young people, whenever somebody is a loner and feels like they don't have an identity, they don't have a place, that's a person that I'm concerned about, because as we've witnessed the breakdown of the family and just the loss of belief in morals and God and truth, haven't we almost created several generations of young people with nothing really to live for?
Well, and that's exactly right. And it was a breakdown in the family that started about 30 to 40 years ago. And parents used to make sure that their kids knew that they were responsible for their actions. But we had a generation or two of kids that grew up and didn't learn that. They didn't learn the personal skills that they needed to be successful. They didn't learn situational awareness. They then became parents, and when they became parents, because they didn't have those skills, it was absolutely impossible to be able to teach those skills to their kids. So they were counting on our schools to teach those critical skills to their kids. Well, that's not the charter of schools. That they don't do that. So that's why over the last 40 years, we've gotten to the point where even 30 and 40-year-olds that are adults today, because they don't have these skills, they can't make sure that their kids have these skills. It's very, very difficult to be able to mentor and grow the youth of our country when the people that are trying to grow them don't have the skills. And I would hear all the time people my age complain about people that that they're lazy, they can't do this, they can't do that. What they were talking about were the symptoms. And when you were just talking about a young person who may be a loner or exhibiting depression or anxiety, those are symptoms. What we need to do is empower people to be able to figure out what the problem is and then get the people the help that they need. So instead of complaining about it, we need to focus on and give people the necessary tools, the critical skills to be able to actually make a difference.
What does all the violence, in your opinion, Colonel, what does the violence say about the spiritual state of our country?
Well, that is very concerning, the spiritual state. Now, it's interesting because I am still a believer that this country is an amazing country. It's a God-fearing country. The majority of people in our country want what's best for them, for their families. They want what's best for their kids. But we are seeing that minority starting to grow. And one of the reasons for that is the lack of development of personal skills. We know in study after study that when people don't learn these skills, when they don't understand that people are allowed to have different perspectives, when that they don't know how to be perceptive, when they don't know how to communicate, they then deal with conflict with anger and violence. So that's a big thing that we're starting to see. The other thing that we're really starting to see that ties into that is the phones that we all have, especially our youth and those that are in their 20s. They've been on their phones for so long, they get their satisfaction from what they get on their phone, not from building and establishing relationships with other people and establishing relationship with Jesus Christ. So all of those things combined are what are causing the issues. So we need to empower people with the necessary skills to be able to reverse that.
I like the 5 words that when you're talking about situational awareness, and I want you to, if you would, please elaborate on these, but identify, assess, predict, decide, and act. I mean, how do we implement those in our day-to-day life, and is this something that, in your opinion, we ought to be thinking about as we go out and interact with people?
Absolutely, and this applies to your safety, but it also applies to your mental health, and it applies to sharing your testimony. At the Progress Group, I took a process from the Air Force called the OODA Loop and turned it into this 5-step process. So anytime you walk into a coffee shop or a restaurant or having a conversation with somebody, you identify everything going on. Is there anything that stands out that's wrong in this environment? Anything that sets the hair on the back of my neck or gut feeling? If you got a good friend and you're talking to them and they're not acting like they normally would, well, that's an indicator. Then you assess. So if I'm in a restaurant, can I sit so my back's not to the door? Where are the exits? Do the bathroom doors locked? And then the same thing when you're having a conversation with somebody. If you want to share your testimony or just learn what's going on with them, you've got to be able to communicate, be perceptive, and ask questions to learn what's going on, get to the root of the problem instead of the symptoms. And then the third step is predict. So if I'm in a coffee shop or a restaurant or in a parking lot, I think about if something were to happen today, what would I do? And then that is all based on your individual capabilities. We will, at the Progress Group, will never tell somebody what to do. We work with them so they figure out what they're capable of doing to set them up for success. Mm-hmm. And that takes place in the first 20 to 35 seconds. And then now you're in a state of preparedness. if something is introduced into your environment or in the coffee shop or the restaurant or in a parking lot, or you're having a conversation with somebody and they behave in a certain way or say something that sets off that hair on the back of the neck or that gut feeling, that God-given gift that we have, now you've done identify, assess, predict. Now you're going to decide what is going on here. You have to use critical thinking. You have to then make a decision. What am I going to do next? And then if you absolutely have to act, whether that's to save somebody's life, save your own life because something bad is going on, or you decide that you do have to help somebody either by you talking to them directly or saying, if I have a young, one of my son's young friends has an issue going on, I'm probably not the right person to talk to him. But I need to then figure out who is the right person and then make sure that that person gets the help that they need, whether it's a coach, whether it's their brother, whether it's my son. But that's all part of the process for us to figure out how to get people the help they need. And the shooting in Virginia where the 6-year-old did the shooting is a perfect example. There were 3 instances where people knew something was wrong, but they never did anything about it.
What do you say? The answer for the left is always to disarm the populace, whereas I believe it's a moral and spiritual problem. But how do you dialogue with those on the left that think the answer is the elimination of guns?
Well, I start out by saying that it's we're guaranteed that right in our Constitution with the Second Amendment. I also talk about how I've never known a gun that pulled its own trigger. We have the Alec Baldwin situation where the FBI came out and said that somebody had to pull that trigger for that bad incident to happen. So guns do not kill. Bullets do not come out of guns unless there's a human that actually pulls that trigger. So the focus needs to be on going, like I said, empowering parents to learn situational awareness, learn the 10 critical skills, learn about responsibility and accountability, something that I was taught but isn't being taught today. Then we need to instill that in our kids so that we can solve that problem. And that it's one of those arguments that you'll have with people. They don't understand because they don't necessarily have the skills. They don't understand perspective. They think they have to be right. I've been in a number of those conversations, and I just changed the subject because I know that is not the right time. God has not put that time to be the time where that person is going to be able to hear what I have to say. It's very similar to sharing your testimony with somebody. I used to teach Navigator 2.7, and I would have people in the class get very frustrated because they would go talk to somebody, they would share their testimony, and that person didn't accept Christ right in front of them. And I would have to talk to them and say, it could be 100 people that actually have to talk to that person, and it's the 100th time when their heart is actually open to hear the message and they will finally accept Jesus Christ into their life. And so we have to have that humility. We have to understand that that's the case. Doesn't mean we stop, but it means that we have to wait until God puts it on their heart to hear what we have to say.
Do you believe every local church should have a security plan and an emergency crisis reaction plan?
I think they do, and on top of that, what I talk about at the Protest Group is I believe every single person that's in that church needs to learn and develop situational awareness because the focus is to prevent bad things from happening. And the way that we do that is by everybody working together to keep that church, to keep that community safe. So people that learn situational awareness, they're in the parking lot, they're walking into the church, they're paying attention to what's going on around them. If that's when you want to be able to identify something, that's then when you want to know who you contact, whether it's a security team or whatever the case may be, to be able to prevent that bad thing from happening. That's what we need to focus on. For example, the white settlement shooting here at the church in Texas, that never should have happened. There were things that could have been done and should have been done by people that had situational awareness and knew what to do to keep that young man from coming back into the church. Jack never would have had to take that young man's life if they just would have known what to do. But every church needs to have that. I think every church needs to have some kind of guardian team, some kind of security team. But the key is that needs to be practiced on a regular basis, and they need to interact with everybody in the church so they work as a team, again, to prevent bad things from happening. And it's not just an active shooter. It's all the things that lead up to suicide and all the other things, all the other threats that are going on in our society.
Let me ask you this, and again, I want to thank you so much for being with us. I mean, and thank you for what you have done and are doing for our country. So, until there's a renaissance and a renovation of public school curriculum, what, as citizens and maybe church members and neighbors, what can we be doing in the meantime to try to help young people understand the greatness of our country and that we need to love this nation? We all need to do our part to care about this nation. What are some things you'd like to see individuals do at this moment?
I am encouraged looking at school districts around the United States that are starting to push back against wokeism. They're starting to push back against, boys being allowed in girls' bathrooms and those types of things. But that's at a small scale right now. I think where we truly make a difference is when the 80% majority of us learn and develop the necessary skills to be able to identify the issues that are out there. And then when you're prepared, you're much more likely to take action. And what we have today is people see all the stuff that's going on. They don't like it. They complain about it, but they don't do anything about it. The more people that become prepared and then are ready to take action, and then we come together, and instead of 100 people in a community that are going to a school board to push back on something, we've got thousands of people that are going back. That's number one. And number two, when we also empower people to be able to think critically, to be able to know what's going on, to be prepared, then they're going to be able to make the right decisions when it comes time to electing people to represent us in our local governments, in our state governments, and in their national governments. We've got to get rid of the career politicians. We've got to put people in place that are willing to solve problems. But we are the ones that need to do that. Ronald Reagan said the nine most dangerous words are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And,
oh wow! Yeah,
that's one of the things our current president said is just relax. We're here to help. We cannot rely on the government to make sure our country remains the fantastic republic.
We're almost out of time. Colonel Searcy, I'm so grateful for you. Again, the website is Paratus Group, PARATUS.group. That's where you can find him online. Folks, in the meantime, let me encourage you. Stay informed. Pray for America. Live a life of truth promotion. Recognize opportunities and influence others. For God and country, stand strong.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.